Welcome to our Fans React. It is Hal here with you on the Sheffield United way, looking back on the Blades' defeat in the capital 2-0 against Chelsea. I actually was quite optimistic and put that we were going to win 2-0 on my Fans React banner before the game. No need for that now. Instead, we're going to look back on what was a disappointing second half. I think there was a lot to enjoy about the first half. I'm going to bring in a Chelsea fan, Charlie. I'm guessing that my optimistic pre-match thoughts, you may have actually been feeling like this was a potential banana skin.
No, absolutely. The way we've been playing recently, or just in this season in general, has not been good enough. A game at home to Sheffield United shouldn't be something as a Chelsea fan we're worried about too much. But such are the times right now that I was nervous going into this one, just based on the fact that home form's been poor this year. And we struggle to break down low blocks. Teams that sit a lot of men behind the ball do come out and play a bit, but they want to keep it tight and try and nick something from a set piece or on a counter attack. And we do struggle to do that. We don't move the ball fast enough. We're too slow in the build-up play. We allow teams to get into their defensive shape. And, that first half was kind of a story of that. I was at the game yesterday. That first half was dreadful. I'm sure from a Sheffield United perspective, you probably enjoyed how you defended. Didn't really let us create any sort of opportunities at all. And, it probably went as your game plan wanted to go. But from my perspective, the first half was awful. We just no real chances for either side, not much happening. A lot of the game sort of 10v10 in the Sheffield United half, but no movement from us, no quick passing, no nothing. And I just think second half, I guess Poch made a slight tactical change at half time. He moved Sterling from the number 10 position out to the right, and he moved Cole Palmer centrally. That made a big difference. Cole Palmer got on the ball a lot more in the second half, and I think ultimately just a little bit of extra individual quality kind of shone through at the end. But it wasn't a game that's going to be remembered, that's for sure.
I think that's a fair way of putting it. I was actually going to ask you what you thought Poch did at half-time, because whatever he did, as you say, that we now know, that tactical switch, it made all the difference, because it was a very, very different second half. Charlie, for you, what are the realistic aims for Chelsea this season? And I don't mean that from where you were thinking at the start of the season. I mean that from where we are now.
I think realistically now, a domestic cup. I think Carabao Cup is certainly a possibility. We've got quarterfinal Tuesday night against Newcastle. Obviously, they hammered us 4-1 the other week, but I think it'll be a much changed Newcastle side. They've picked up a few more injuries. I know they're getting a few players back, but I think a Carabao Cup is potentially a realistic target. And look, at the start of the season, I said Champions League, but I think that's probably slightly changed now. If we can get into the Europa League spaces, if Man United lose today, which I think is likely, then we'll be 5 points off 7th in the table, 6th or 7th, which is a Europa League spot. That's not insurmountable. So I think for me, a domestic cup, the Carabao, and if we can get into the Europa League spots, then from this position right now, I would take that.
It's going to be interesting, the Tuesday night game. How do you actually see it ending with Poch? And I mean that because there's already some disgruntled Chelsea fans. A long time since you'd had 2 back-to-back home wins and then Sheffield United roll into town. Do you think that this is a long-term, that you're going to be talking about Poch as similar way that you speak about Mourinho and Ranieri, or do you think this is going to be one where he's not here for the long term?
It's so hard to tell, really. He's been here 15, 16 games in the Premier League. It's a project. I know, people hate hearing that, but it is. That's what he signed up for. That's what the owners have come in to do. The recruitment strategy and stuff. They knew that there was going to be some teething issues to begin with when you've got a load of young players, inexperienced, particularly inexperienced in the Premier League, inexperienced in amount of games they've played. You've got players coming into the club and the league that haven't even played 50 or 60 games of senior football. And when you're putting all that together, it's not conducive to picking up good results on a consistent basis. Yes, as individuals, we've got very talented players. And you looked at the squad just on paper, it probably is a top 4 or top 5 squad. But the reality in terms of a team is that we are where we deserve to be. The table doesn't lie at the end of the day. It's 15, 16 games now. We are, at the moment, performing as a mid-table team. And it's on the manager to get more out of those players, for those players to gel a bit more. I know it sounds mad. We need to add some more players in January. There's some glaringly obvious positions that need filling. In terms of the manager himself, look, he signed two and a half or 2 year contract he was given. They obviously learned from the 5 year contract mistake that they gave Graham Potter. And look, he needs to be here for at least, well, I mean, obviously, like, we can't just keep him here for the sake of keeping him here if the results are terrible and we're finishing bottom half of the table or whatever. But realistically, he needs to be here for 2 or 3 seasons. Again, that's an ideal scenario, but we don't know what's going to happen. But look, do I think he's going to be the guy that brings us like league titles and things like that? No, not necessarily. I mean, could be, and I could be wrong, but I think he's probably going to be maybe a little bit similar to Eddie Howe at Newcastle. He's going to be the guy that gets the ball rolling and gets us so far, and then someone else comes in and sort of takes us over the finishing line.
It'll be interesting to see. I'm going to keep you here, Charlie, while I bring in a couple of blades. Harvey and Josh are going to join us, and I'll welcome both of you back. We've chatted with both of you before. Harvey, I'm going to start with you because I want Charlie to kind of hear your thoughts on this. So, Harvey, talk me through the first half as you saw it from a Sheffield United perspective.
I really enjoyed it. It was difficult, obviously, because you knew we were never going to have a lot of the ball. It was going to be a case of, right, we're going to watch the 10 men in blue out in the outfield have a lot of the ball and just see how compact we can be and see how we can react to the situations they try and create. And I thought for the vast majority of the half, we reacted really well. Like, the move to a back four has been a really positive one under Chris Wilder so far. I think there has been doubts in the past over Bogle's defensive ability, and I think his first 2 games under Wilder, he really stepped up. And I think today we saw a bit of a shortcoming, because I think Mudryk gave him a bit of a run around in the first half. But even when he did get beat, there was recovery there. Trusty and Ahmed Hodzic, I thought both performed really well. The only frustration for me really came from at times where we were trying to play out and we were trying to get on the counter attack. Some of those passes weren't as fluid, and that's where the difference in quality really showed in the first half, because albeit Chelsea were under less pressure on the ball, especially when trying to build attacks, you could see that when we did press, the passing was a lot more fluid, and that's where the difference comes in. But overall, I really, really enjoyed that first half.
Josh, I want your thoughts on the second, and then Charlie, I'll come back to you, because one thing I'll be interested to know, Charlie, is do you watch your team and it's like just your team? Or bearing in mind what you've heard from Harvey and what you're about to hear from Josh, do you think, oh, yeah, no, I did notice that block from Bogle, that tackle from Arnell? Because you might not, as it's not your team. Josh, talk to me about the second half and what went wrong in that second period.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, we came out kind of all right, but there was a kind of lacking energy that we saw in the first half. I agree totally with Harvey's summary of the first half, and I thought that the passing that was at times good, at times a problem. I think we'd had this intent to play, kind of first time when we get the ball, relieve the pressure by playing it quickly. Sometimes that worked well. I thought McBurney played a couple of great passes in the first half, and then in the second half, we just weren't quite finding our man as well, and we gave it away a lot, turned it over. My disappointment, that first goal, we could analyse it, but it was very, very quick. It's Chelsea. The players are, top quality players. It was the reaction to the first goal, and I did feel like it knocked the wind out of our sails a bit, and I don't like to see that from a United team. That second goal, for me, was unforgivable for a few reasons. The goalkeeping aside, I was really, really disappointed with Bogle and Arnell. They just stopped. They were talking to the referee. Arnell was on his knees, could have got up. For me, if you're contesting the referee, just get on the goal line while you're doing it. Just stand there. But they both stopped. And when you actually watched it back, they didn't have a case either. So for me, it was their heads had gone. And then the rest of that second half, it just felt like we didn't want to concede another one. We'd try and nick one if we could, chance late on. But I never felt like we were going to score. And I think it really was just trying not to go 3 or 4-0 down at that point, which was disappointing.
Well, Charlie, you've heard the thoughts of a couple of blades. Josh never felt like we were going to actually score. Did you at any point feel like, hello, going to be really testing the keeper here and Sheffield United are about to bag?
Not really, if I'm honest. Like, I think your best chance was to keep it goalless for as long as possible. Frustration grows for us fans, unrest in the stands given our poor run of form. But I felt once we got that first goal, I didn't really see a way back for Sheffield United. Not because we're as some sort of amazing side and we keep clean sheets left, right, and centre. We don't. But I just didn't feel there was much threat in the final third. One thing I was surprised about, obviously, we had Petrovic making his full debut in goal. I don't know how much you guys have watched of Chelsea, but our passing out from the back, our defenders on the ball, passing out and stuff. It's been really poor in a lot of recent games and for large parts of this season. I was a little bit surprised that there wasn't much pressure on the goalkeeper when he had the ball at the back. It was quite easy for him. He had a lot of time on the ball to pick his pass. Petrovic's distribution was quite decent, but I'm surprised that there wasn't maybe a bit more pressing and pressurizing when our defenders and keeper were on the ball, because that would have been something that, as an opposition, you'd watch Chelsea this season, you think, yeah, distribution from the keeper's been poor. Defenders passing out's been bad as well. So I was a little bit surprised about that. But look, I think the first half of Sheffield United was good in the sense that kept things tight, made it difficult for us. I mean, we didn't help ourselves, but in terms of a game plan, it went pretty well for them. And then second half, I just think, as I said before, that little bit of individual quality made the difference. And then once that second goal went in, it was a weird one, that second one. Sort of thought, that's definitely going to be ruled out. But, it wasn't in the end, and rightfully so. And then from that point, it's kind of it is game over. But yeah, the lack of pressing on the goalkeeper and defenders did kind of surprise me a little bit. I would have thought that would have been something that absolutely should have been targeted.
Yeah, I thought we might test an untested in the Premier League goalkeeper. I believe came from the Major League Soccer, so could have been worth giving him a test. Charlie, you passed your Sheffield United way test with flying colours. Well, very fair, very reasoned and sensible opinions. And apart from Brentford fans, every opposition fan we've had has been absolutely incredible. So, Charlie, thank you very much, and we'll let you escape. Cheers.
No, absolute pleasure. Cheers, lads.
Thanks a lot to Charlie. We're going to bring Gary in, who is a Blades. Gary, I want to ask you a question. Is this result to be expected, or at full time, were you thinking there's cause for concern?
Hey, let's be realistic. We're playing Chelsea. Chelsea aren't in the best of form, but we've got to be realistic. Wilder's taken over this side, which 3 weeks ago, were completely demoralised. Wilder plays the whole bond of the team, and I think that's coming. I think if you've seen after the match, he had the huddle. I think he's constantly talking to players. And once that bond comes, I think we're going to be in a really good position. I think that's the one thing Hecky lacked. My one concern is tactically, I feel Hecky was better than Chris Wilder. And I believe Chris Wilder's learned since he's been away. And that's a positive. I think he's quite happy to take some stuff on the chin. I think he's getting a little bit more realistic and stop blaming people. And I think that's a real positive. Where do we go on? We've got to do something in the January transfer window, because everybody just looks completely and utterly shattered. And that's because of the effort they're putting in. And you can't knock the boys for that. They're doing a really good job, but they're just gassing out. I'd like to see Slimani either start or get a bit better, more of a run. I think Gus Hamer at the minute looks really, really tired. But equally, we're playing him completely out of position. He's playing as a CDM when in actual fact he's a cam. So let's be realistic about that, and let's stop putting square pegs in round holes, and let's adapt to our players and what we've got. But we've got to get reinforcements that's going to work for us.
I couldn't agree more with all of that, particularly Slimani. I think it'd be really good to see a little bit more of him. He was exciting in the sort of 10 minutes that he got. Harvey, 27th defeat in the last 32 away from home, according to what I heard on Match of the Day. At no point have I validated that. So what is the problem, even if that's right or not? Because it's clearly not working away from home. We've got a draw against Brighton, but the rest of them have been concerning. And even that draw against Brighton, it was only when the red card happened. Now, I was hoping we might see a Caicedo red card in this Chelsea game, but it didn't happen. Harvey, what's going wrong away from home? I know that's a big question.
It is, and I think this season you've got to put it down to lack of confidence more than anything, because I think going away to big teams in the Premier League, like coming as close as we did as Tottenham, and I don't really want to use this as the reference point for the entire season, but it does feel like a lot of the unravelings started at their new ground, because such a traditional, good bottom of the league away performance where you're like, right, just graft as hard as possible, do the hard yards. If we get a chance, take it. And we did. And for it to unravel the way it did in the final few minutes was so heartbreaking. And I think a lot of players now, it might have just seeped in their mind that with these new added time rules and all other factors about playing in the Premier League, it might not matter like what you do, you might still just get pegged back. And I think after the Newcastle game as well, confidence was shot massively. Even at home, we were putting in lacklustre performances. But I think with time, I think Wilder's away record, the first season in the Premier League a few years ago, was one of the shining lights of that season. Like, I think we didn't lose in London the entire time, which has definitely been the polar opposite of this season. We've hated going to the capital. But no, I think it'll come with time. I think Heckingbottom, his system away from home, I could understand it, but it wasn't effective because we would sit and we would try and break, which is completely fine. But once you concede that one goal, and I think it happened yesterday to an extent, even under Wilder, the heads drop. And like Charlie said, I agreed after that first goal. And yes, we were playing against Chelsea, and they're as poor as they have been this season, they're still leagues above where we are in terms of personnel. But once that first goal went in, it really did seem like even too far a stretch to suggest we'd get a point from that game.
I felt exactly the same at the time. Gary, Harvey's just brought up a really interesting point, that Tottenham match. Now, I did an interview not too long ago with a newspaper where I said that Tottenham game will be the biggest, and that's actually a bigger result than the Newcastle home match. Gary, for you, do you think that Tottenham one, because the players played so well, because there was such an unusual amount of added time, they're thinking they've got to 90 minutes, they've got to play 15 minutes more. Do you think that one actually, psychologically, is the one we might look back on at the end of the season and arguably could have been bigger than Newcastle?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I didn't air back even as far as the Man City game, where we did a similar thing, not in the added time, but we collapsed. Spurs, yeah, really difficult. How do we sort of move on from that psychologically? Harvey's picked up some good points there. You know, it's really difficult once you've lost that confidence, and once you're constantly thinking, oh, if we go one down here, or if we get an equaliser, can we muster the energy to get back in it? I just think we're really, really struggling. And I take it back to the point. I think if we've got options off a bench that we can change things, we can change formations, we can then affect it. You seen yesterday with Poch. Poch turned round and he, I know Charlie said he put Raheem Sterling out on the right and he dropped Cole Palmer in. Yes, he did. But what he also did was he dropped Cole Palmer 10 metres back. And all that did for us, we almost had two banks of four trying to defend it in the second half because we tried to change and put two up top. And all it did was just create a huge gap, which Cole Palmer could just run around it and almost sort of do anything he wanted at will.
Yeah, it was the danger man I highlighted on the match preview, Cole Palmer, and unfortunately, I don't like being right on that one. Proved to be the case. Josh, Gary's already mentioned January will be huge. Now, we know that we've got 25 players registered, so players have got to go or be unregistered from the squad list that you submit to the Premier League. Josh, which areas need strengthening in January?
Yeah, I think for me yesterday, I was worried about Jack Robinson being out. And I think, you know, to an extent, Max Lowe played better than I expected. I've not been particularly high on Max Lowe in the past. But he's still, you know, I think we missed Jack Robinson yesterday. I think we need strengthening there, especially if Egan's going to continue to be out for as long as he has been. And again, it's about reintroducing competition, isn't it? I think Anel's been a little bit wavy at times, and I think making sure that there's options there is really important. And then the other thing, it sounds obvious, but we need to start scoring some goals, don't we? And I'm saying that, you know, fully aware of the fact that we've got Archer, McBurney, Brewster, all sorts of strikers on the roster, and I'm not necessarily saying that, you know, bringing in strikers is going to be the change that we need to see, but we need to be getting goals from somewhere. And I think this is an area that Chris Wilder can start to think about what tactically what he'd like to introduce, what kind of players he wants to bring in, and how we might start creating things, and most importantly, putting them away. So
there's a question here. Jake's brought this up about the goalkeeper. I really do feel we need to strengthen our goalkeepers. So, Josh, while I've got you here and I'm asking you about strengthening, I mean, goalkeepers, the goalkeeper at Rotherham, Victor Johansson, I think it might be, he's been one that's been mentioned. Josh, have you got an eye on a keeper, or do you think that's an area that we can actually survive with Wes longer term, maybe bringing a backup?
Yeah, I like Victor Johansson. For me, it's not the number one priority. We're a club with limited funds, limited resources. I think in terms of affecting the games consistently, it's outfield that we could most benefit from recruitment. Listen, Wes is a known quantity. We know what he's good at, and we know what he's not so good at. And statistically, I think he's doing all right for us at the moment. We know that he's mistake prone, but also the players want somebody behind them that they know, and somebody who they know where he's going to be. I think he's for the mistake yesterday. There was also his positioning was pretty good all through the game, coming out for these balls that could have caused us some problems and getting to them. And I think he's been doing that a lot this season that we perhaps haven't put as much weight on it. So, long term, I don't think he's a Premier League level keeper, but I'm not sure he's my January priority for me.
Harvey, your January priority, which areas?
I think we need a left back, which is frustrating given that we've got about 5 already. The loan signing of Larouci, obviously we've not seen too much of him, so I don't really know how to judge him, but it might be an indication that the fact that we've not had much of a chance to see him might tell something on its own. Max Lowe, I don't think he's up to the standard, unfortunately, of the Premier League, and I think that could be said of a few players, which isn't always their fault. But I do think that is a room for upgrade, because I think Luke Thomas is just an absolute flop of a signing, unfortunately. I know Leicester are obviously a sort of a super team in the Championship really this season, but if they were happy to let him go and not to take part in a Championship side, it didn't bode well for him coming straight into a Premier League 11. So I think fullback is really where we need to focus on. Get that back four secure, get it consistent. I've enjoyed Trusty when he's played out there, but I do understand he is a tried and tested centre half, and I thought he performed well for the most part yesterday. And I understand Josh's point about a striker, and I think we probably just need to create more chances for them to put away more than anything, because yesterday, probably the best effort was Harmer's free kick and then Archer's pop outside the box in the first half, but I guess clinicality could come into it because Burgle's cut back across there. If either McBurney or Archer just makes a bit of a cleverer run, gets in there a bit earlier, then we're 1-0 up, and who knows what can happen for the rest of the game with how solid we were going into that spell. But yeah, I think fullback for me, and potentially maybe another midfielder, because we are looking a bit light there. It's brilliant what Andre Brooks has done in the last few games, but I don't think we should pin our hopes on a 20-year-old who's barely played any professional football to carry our midfield through the rest of the season.
Might have an eye on next season, of course, with blooding some of these youngsters, and we'll have to see what division we're in. Gary, you've heard what Harvey and Josh have said, so same question to you. Do you believe there's areas that need strengthening in January? I think the answer to that is fairly rhetorical. And which ones?
Completely agree with the lads on that. For me, the most important place is we need to give Sousa some help. I think we've seen it since Wilder's come in. He's buoyed him. He's really got him in a good position. Ollie Norwood, unfortunately for me, is a top-level Championship player. He's not strong enough, but he'd be nice to have as an option on the bench. I noticed yesterday Fleck wasn't even in the squad. He's not injured. And I think Fleck's probably one of the 25 that can go as well as Larouci, Thomas. So we're freeing up spaces there. But definitely for me, if he's going to play 2 6s, he's got to get another 6 that's really, really strong. And somebody who can grind results out and give Sousa a bit of a hand, because at the minute he's just sort of playing it all by himself. And whilst he's Brazilian, I don't think he's managing to carry that out.
I'm going to ask Josh your thoughts on this story that Iliman Ndiaye's struggle for game time at Marseille has put Premier League clubs on alert, with Sheffield United, Crystal Palace and Everton amongst the clubs reportedly interested in a potential loan move for the now 23-year-old. Alan Nixon reporting this one. So, Josh, how excited are you? Do you think there's any chance that Iliman Ndiaye comes back on loan to Sheffield United in January, or is that too much wishful thinking and he would never go back on that?
Yeah, listen, break the bank, sell the stadium, sell half the squad, let's get him in. No, it's romantic, isn't it? I love
well,
the
what
idea.
about the African Cup of Nations? We've got quite a few players that might be involved in that. We'd then be bringing another one back.
Absolutely, that's true. That's assuming that he's going to get picked for Senegal. You know, he's I mean, he will. I think he'll end up in the squad, won't he? But you know, it's a consideration. But you know, I think we need to be looking kind of. I mean, mathematically, we need to add up how many games we've got and how many games. I don't know how many games does the AFCON affect. That wouldn't be the top of my consideration. You know, I'd be looking at a player who knows this squad, who can be creative in this squad, and who, for me, ticks a lot of boxes in terms of what we're lacking. Yeah, I'd love to get him in, and I wouldn't be too worried about the AFCON, to be honest.
I mean, Harvey, Iliman and Dai, obviously on paper, you just say yes, but then you have to consider that if there's one nation that's probably going to go quite far in the African Cup of Nations, it could be Senegal. And so really you'd be getting a player back on loan for how many games? We don't actually know. And of course, Josh is right. We don't know. The final squad hasn't been announced for Senegal. But Harvey, what would be your thoughts on a potential return for Iliman and Dai? Or do you think he'd favour Crystal Palace and maybe Everton come back and haunt us?
Yeah, I wouldn't blame him in the slightest if he looked at Palace and especially Everton with how they're playing at the moment and saw them as a more favourable option for his career moving forward. But I did, because coming back to us, it might be, do I really want to go and do a relegation dogfight for the last few months of the season? Do I want to limit how much I'm going to get on the ball to show my abilities to get back in that Marseille team? That is the boring, realistic way of looking at it. But from a fan's perspective, I'd give anything to have him back. He's probably, him and Gibbs White, maybe the most talented players I've ever seen in my lifetime at United when it comes to just individual skill. He's been a marvel to watch the last couple of seasons. And I was absolutely gutted when he left in the summer. So any chance to see him back in a United shirt, especially while he's still, like, I know he's not been in the Marseille team so much since Gattuso took over as manager, but it's not as if we're getting him back when he's 35 and he's lost it. And it's just a novelty thing, like, when Warnock brought Bright Dean on against like Brighton in like 2006, where it was just like, I'll give him a run out, but he could genuinely elevate the level of the team considerably. So at any chance, AFCON or not, Senegal get to the final, he scores the winner, he comes back on a high, keeps us up. That'd be the ideal scenario.
I really would. What a picture you've painted there. You get a great reception. I mean, Harvey just mentioned there, Gary, about the sort of two best players he's seen, Morgan Gibbs-White and Iliman and Dai. What about you? Just throwing this one out there, best player you've ever seen at the Lane, and then you can let me know your thoughts on Iliman and if you bring him back.
Nick Montgomery.
Of course, Nick Montgomery, Axel Smeet, Saji Burton, David Guzbrex, they're all in the conversation. But who's the real one?
Yeah, Illy, for me, is a no. And I know you'll get plenty of blades or berate me for it, but actually, Illy was amazing in the Championship. I think he'd get found out quite quickly in the Prem. He did well against Tottenham last year, but actually, no, I don't think so. I'd take Gibbs-White back in a heartbeat, because Gibbs-White is really proving it in a struggling Forest side. I don't know. Best player for the Blades, for me, Alan Kelly.
Oh, what a shout. What a keeper. I love that shout. Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely. Wonderful. All right, so I'm going to ask you all this question. I keep doing it. I would love to be in a stage where I'm doing these fans reacts and we don't need to keep talking about this. I thought we might go on a little run. I'm looking at the fixtures. Josh, the fixtures are looking tough. Aston Villa with their home form. Luton becomes a really, really big game. Josh, do you see Sheffield United doing enough that we can come back in a month's, 2 months' time, do this again, and I won't have to ask you, are we staying up?
It's a tall order at this point. It's a tall order. The Aston Villa look almost unbeatable at the moment, especially at home. And then I think we've got City, haven't we? It's looking...
People will just be writing that off, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not.
It's looking really, really tough, But with Chris Wilder, I think he'll be looking at kind of the next 18 months. He's got a 2-year contract, and I think that's where his head will be at, and I think that's right. And listen, I'd love to enjoy next season and be going into a games thinking that we might have a chance at picking up enough points to scrape through. But at this moment in time, I don't see it. But also, I'm not devastated about it. We knew how hard this season was going to be. We knew what we needed to do. Financially, we're in a better position. And I'm enjoying the journey.
Gary, are we going to get more than 11 points?
Of course we are. We're Blades. There's no chance we're going down. without a fight.
Okay, the last bit was a key bit of addition there.
I don't know. Will we survive? Equally, I don't know. I think one of the bonuses we've got with these next 3 games is, for me, I think if we get a point out of them, I'll be happy. Villa, not a chance. Luton is very difficult. Luton are on fire at the minute. And as we've seen against Burnley, we could really, really struggle against them. I think we'll take a point against City. And I think the bonus we've got is January's quite a big gap before we sort of step back into it. So we've got a chance to get a few players in, got a chance to bond them. Gillingham, let's chuck the under 23 kids out. Let's not really matter about it. And let's try and move on. Let's try and make a better half of the second part of the season. And I'm completely with Josh. You know, it's let's get this season done. Let's probably get back in the Championship, and then let's build. Hopefully, we'll get a bit of investment. Hopefully, we can start to move forward. I mean, look at that Chelsea squad yesterday. We're talking billions, you know, and we just don't have that on there. I think there was a crazy stat yesterday. Their squad could have bought our club. And that was only the first 11. Realistically, come on, we can't compete with that. And we've got to do something to be able to compete with those type of figures.
Yeah, huge figures. Harvey, you've heard what Gary has to say. Let's get your final thoughts on where it's all going to go. And of course, this next run of fixtures. It doesn't look great on paper, but I do think that maybe Chris Wilder's done something that's galvanized this squad. Even at the end, you saw them all in the huddle. They look together.
Yeah, and I could just go down the very predictable route of, well, look at our form.
Look at Villa's form. Look who you've got.
But I think probably it's probably too much to ask for us to get a lot of games. And I think that Luton maybe, but I do think that they're on a good enough run of form to see them through and get a result against us, even though it's obviously the one you'd want to be the most confident going into rather than City and Villa. And all best wishes to everyone at Luton, by the way, because that was a horrible incident yesterday with Tom Lockyer, and you can only hope he's recovered as swiftly as possible, and all connected with the club, because and they'll obviously be galvanised, I think, and obviously they'll want to get behind each other after that. They seem a really tight-knit players and management. You saw the emotion on Rob Edwards' face yesterday after the fact, going over to thank the fans, and they've had a really, really good year or so together as a group, and I think that'll really bring them stronger. But for us going forward, going into January, we have that little break. We have the cup game. I'd actually like to see us go for it in the cup game. I'm not saying full 11, but
I would too.
It can be a confidence builder. Like even if it is against a League 2 Gillingham, if we can go somewhere and for the first time this season win convincingly, it can sort of put in the minds of the players like, do you know what? All right, we are still decent professional footballers. We're a good team. Like, we can do this. And I think it should, because I think the best part of the season we went down last time was the cup run, because albeit we had quite a friendly draw for the couple of rounds. But we've got players coming back, as Scott's mentioned there, and I think there's reason to be confident under Chris Wilder. Is the last message I'll give on quite a rambling answer, but it might be too much to ask for us to stay up. But as a romantic, you've got Chris Wilder in the dugout. Magic happens.
I love it. So what Harvey's saying, I'm reading between the lines. We're going down, but we're winning the FA Cup.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Gary, Josh, Harvey, I'll also thank Charlie from earlier. It's been a pleasure speaking with all of you. Thank you very much for giving up this time on your Sunday. Really appreciate it.